good to be here in the Great Hall this morning, although it just isn't the same without all of you. The space feels a little empty and lonely, and yet that feels entirely suitable for this morning's service, our annual ritual of mourning and remembrance. This day where we collectively acknowledge our sorrows and witness each other's losses. The day we stop and sit with grief. And there's much to grieve this year. Even as I hear the figures about COVID-19 cases, even as I live in the local hottest hotspot of Brampton, I really struggle to really understand and accept the scope of the pandemic. My life feels normal in this limited kind of way, and yet I know beside me lies the reality of serious illnesses and busier intensive care units. And in other countries, there are mass graves being dug due to the numbers dying. It's hard to accept all that death. And I think it's a struggle in general for us to come to terms with death, even if death is welcomed like a dear friend. And it's so much harder when death arrives unexpectedly or shows up far too soon. Being alive and loving means accepting that the people we love will die, that we will die. We all meet death. And yet we all wish that we and those we love are the exception to the rule. And sometimes we're pretty sure we are the exception until death comes knocking. And as people of the chalice, we affirm life. And in affirming life, we acknowledge that death is natural. Death is at the kitchen table drinking tea with us. Sorrow and joy drink from the same cup, as do grief and delight. And we try as Unitarian Universalists to welcome all to our house. We know that life and death arrive together. If we try to deny that reality, we deny the grace of life. And so we love, and those we love die, and we grieve and we remember them. We tell their stories, feel their presence ongoing in our lives, and we miss them terribly. And sometimes the people we love were difficult to love, or their relationship was rocky, and that makes grief more complicated. So grief includes a number of feelings: guilt and regret over what was done or not done, for troubles between you, even relief and release to be free of a charged relationship. You have to work through all that messy life stuff, and it takes time. But if we can see those we have lost as broken and whole, be honest about their limitations and our own, we can find ways to honor them and see the good in them and grieve with a whole heart. We live in a time which I think until recently didn't have much room for sadness. We're supposed to buck up, move on, get past it, focus on the good, on what we have, be grateful. But if we accept that sadness is a part of living, we are less likely to run from it into the addiction of frantic activity or addictions. To live for a time with the hollow spaces that death and loss leave with us is healthy. And it's said that the depth of our grief reveals the depth of our love. When we sit with our grief, we honor the love we feel for that person. Sadness is part of the human job description. That's just the way it is. And life can be terrible at times, and I think it is kind of terrible right now. If you're not sad, a little bit sad at the moment, you're doing a great job avoiding the news. So I think we just need to accept that sadness and be sad when we need to be sad and let it flow through us. Remembering that when sorrow comes, joy is somewhere there too. And when we accept grief into our hearts, delight comes as well. Sorrow and joy, grief and delight. May we feel all the feelings as we live and love and say goodbye. So say we all.